Chairman of Poplar Limehouse Conservatives, representing Chris Wilford, your Conservative Party candidate for Poplar Limehouse.
I'm Elaine Bagshaw. I'm the candidate for the Liberal Democrats.
My name is Oliver Rahman. I'm the independent candidate for Poplar Limehouse.
Great. We do not have Jim Fitzpatrick and Nicholas McQueen attending. Sorry, Jim Fitzpatrick is representing Labour and Nicholas McQueen representing UKIP. They haven't been able to attend this debate. Firstly, I would like to request all the candidates to introduce their policies one by one and inform the constituents a little bit about themselves. Before that, one reminder to our viewers: you can ask your questions, pose your questions and comments through Facebook Live, LB24tv's Facebook page, and we will pick it up and we will pose those questions on your behalf. So we'll start with David Barker.
Okay, so I'm standing as an independent, so I can't sell a party, but I can look to sell me as a person. So my background is, I was one of the first internet entrepreneurs back in 1994, 23 years ago. And since then I've created 3 tech companies. But for me, that very nearly didn't happen, because when I was 15 years old at school, my careers teacher said, David, you're from a poor background, you're not going to college, therefore you'll never get into technology, lower your aspirations and I can help you. And I said, no, I don't need that kind of help. So I left school unemployed. Thankfully for me, I got an apprenticeship, and that gave me an opportunity, because the business said, you've got potential, we're going to give you a chance. And it was a government scheme, and that's a great example of government, business and society working well together. 7 years later, I became one of the first internet entrepreneurs, and over the next 10 years became very wealthy. But by 2004, I just realised the system is broken, and too many get left behind when a few like me get out of poverty and get rich. So I decided, I resigned from my company, and since 2004 I've been a social entrepreneur. I've set up social enterprises helping long-term unemployed into work, and that's not just people like me. And one thing I said was, this cannot just be for people like me, from my background. I want to find a way that everybody from every social background, every faith, every ability can actually get into work, and that's what drives me. It's equality of opportunity for all. And 2 years ago I decided it's not just the capitalist system that was broken. For me, the political system is as broken as capitalism, and I feel we need more people with a different kind of mindset, not career politicians, but real people standing for election. And I wouldn't ask you to do that if I'm not willing to do that myself. So this is my way of standing to be elected to represent the people of Poplar Limehouse, where child poverty is still 43%, and Canary Wharf is just down the road. So I'm here to do something about that, so that everybody can really have equality of opportunity and a better world that we can all live in, not just for our generation, but for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. We'll move on to Bethan.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm standing for the Green Party. Everyone knows that the Green Party stands for the environment, for one thing, and certainly that's true. We have some of the worst air quality in the country in Tower Hamlets, and it doesn't matter how rich you are. If you can't breathe, all your money is not going to do you very much good. So on a local level, what that means is that we want to reduce the number of cars on the road. We want to prevent airport expansion. We don't think we need another runway at City Airport. And we don't think the Silvertown Tunnel is needed. We think it's in the wrong place, and we think it's the wrong kind of river crossing. But we're not just about the environment. We're also very interested in our public services. We think that for too long our public services have been underfunded and left to rot, basically. So we think that we need to increase funding to our NHS, we need to increase funding to our schools, we need to increase funding to the police and to social services and local authorities, so that they can provide the services which are actually needed. We often hear, well, there isn't all the money to do this, but there often seems to be the money to fund the rich when they need money for things, so I don't see why we can't get the funding for these services if we reprioritise what we fund. We also are very strong on social housing. Housing is a huge issue in this area. I know that. I've just been made temporarily homeless myself, and I won't be moving into a new house for a few weeks yet, so I know the pressures on housing. I've been living in a one-bedroom flat with my 2 children for the last 9 years. We're finally going to get some adequate housing, but I think everyone in the borough deserves adequate, affordable housing. We need to invest more in social housing. We need to have rent caps. We need to stop the cuts to housing benefit. I think that's truly important. All of these policies are focused on poverty and opportunity, but also we're looking at Brexit as well and thinking, okay, it looks like we may have to leave the European Union. We think people deserve a vote on that at the point where we actually know what that stands for. You wouldn't sign a contract if you didn't know what was in the contract. So we think at the point when we have some kind of agreement worked out, people should be able to say, okay, do I want this agreement? Do I not want this agreement? Do I maybe want to change my mind about this at this point? So we think democracy should continue, so people should have a vote on that. Regardless of what happens, we think we need to stand up for our friends and our neighbours around us. Lots of people in the area are migrants, and they all deserve their rights to be protected. They have the right to have their family life protected. They have the right to have their work protected and their rights to settle here and be here.
Great. Thank you, Bethan. Let's move to Tom Rundle.
Hello, I'm representing Chris Wilford this evening. Chris sends his apologies, has a prior engagement with some community leaders, but he would love to be here tonight and does send his thanks for the invitation and his greetings to the audience. This is a critical election in our nation's story. 11 days after polling day on Thursday, this country will begin the negotiations to leave the European Union. So your decision on Thursday is who is going to lead those negotiations. Is it going to be Theresa May and her team who offers strong and stable leadership for this country? Or is it going to be a coalition of chaos led by Jeremy Corbyn and some followers on who have no real costed plan for leading this country or any sort of real idea of how they're going to achieve a successful Brexit? Chris Wilford is very proud to stand as Theresa May's candidate in Poplar Limehouse, and he will be supporting her and the rest of Theresa May's team to achieve a fair Britain with opportunity for all and a successful Brexit for this country and successful Brexit negotiations over the next few years. Chris also has a 3-point plan for Poplar Limehouse based around a need for sustainable development in this constituency, something which has been lacking over the last years, a need for more schools, good schools in this constituency, which we are severely lacking, and also a crackdown on antisocial behaviour. This constituency has been blighted over the past years by antisocial behaviour, legal highs, drug taking, and noise and boy races on the streets. I know Chris is very keen to tackle that head on so that we can have a more safer, more sustainable community to live in. Chris is a veteran of Tower Hamlets politics. He has stood in the 2014 mayoral election as the Conservative Party candidate. That was the election, of course, that was voided because of electoral fraud by Lutfer Rahman. He has more recently stood as the 2015 parliamentary candidate in Poplar Limehouse, and he is very much looking forward to standing as the Conservative Party candidate this time and becoming the first Conservative MP for Poplar Limehouse on Thursday.
Thank you, Tom. We'll move on to Elaine.
Thank you. So I'm Elaine Bagshaw. I'm standing for the Liberal Democrats. I've been lucky enough to live in the constituency for nearly 5 years. I'm the only person in my family that's been to university. I grew up in Nottingham, which is relatively similar to Tower Hamlets in terms of levels of deprivation and poverty. I was incredibly lucky to get the opportunities that I did and the education that I did to be able to be sat in front of all of you today. And so the reason that I joined the Lib Dems and I got into politics is to make sure that everyone gets those opportunities that I did, and that it's not based on luck, it's based on how talented and how able you are, not luck or who your parents are. For this constituency, we want, as Lib Dems, we want to make a real difference to people that live here. So education is one of our key priorities. We want to make sure we keep free school lunches for our children. We want to reverse the changes to the funding formula that's been being put through. And we also want to triple the people premium, which is money that's targeted at children from poorer backgrounds. In Tower Hamlets alone, that will give our schools an extra £62 million a year that they can spend on the extra support staff they might need, on extra teaching, or just extra activities for our children to make sure they get the most out of their education. We also really want to look after the NHS. And my younger brother was born with a hole in his heart and a number of other issues, so he was in and out of hospital when we were growing up. And I've just finished 6 months working in the NHS as well, seeing how overstretched that people there are. So we want to put an extra penny on income tax to raise an extra £6 billion a year for the NHS. In Tower Hamlets, that would be an extra £31.2 million for our hospitals and doctors' surgeries and health centres, making sure that you get the care that you need when you need it. And £1 billion of that money will actually be reserved for mental health care as well, so making sure that if you have a mental health need, it's treated in exactly the same way as a physical health need, and you're not sat on a waiting list for 6 weeks or more like so many people are at the moment. We also want to scrap the prevent strategy. That's something that we think has been really divisive, particularly in this community. So rather than building relationships with the community, we've seen a really divisive agenda that has seen people being policed and overly monitored, and that's not what creates good links in the community. So we want to change that to an engaged strategy, which is all about making sure that we're working with communities and understanding their issues and not stopping people from doing things, which is what happens at the moment. So I'm really proud to have lived in the constituency. I ran in 2015 and I've carried on working even though I didn't get elected then. Just like Chris, we're probably both a bit surprised that we're back here a little bit earlier than we were expecting, but it's been a really great campaign, and this doesn't have to be a safe seat. If you think that Labour haven't stood up for you and you feel let down and you feel like, you know, the current MP has been there for 20 years and you're looking around and can't quite work out what's changed in the constituency, then on Thursday you can vote differently and have a better future if you vote for the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Liv. Now, Oliur Rahman.
My name is Oliur Rahman. I'm standing as your independent candidate for Poplar Limehouse. I live in constituency. I have always lived in Tower Hamlets. I grew up in Tower Hamlets, went to school in Tower Hamlets. My daughter attends a school in Tower Hamlets. I know the issues and the impact it have on the community, just like back of my hand. Whether it's housing, whether it's a drug problem, whether it's antisocial behavior, whether it's Islamophobia, whether it's discrimination, I know and aware of every single one of them. I've been a councillor for the last 14 years, representing a ward called Stepney Green in Tower Hamlets. I have been visiting homes. I agree with some of the issues my colleagues have raised about housing. I have seen people living in one bedroom, not even a bedroom, it's a box room, with their children, with their families, struggling. Their health gets affected, their education, children education gets affected as a result of it. So when you live in overcrowding homes, it's not just your home, but it's also affect your health and it affects the future of your children, because they are not able to study, they are not able to do their homework. When I was cabinet member for children's services in Tower Hamlets, I recognized the poverty. I recognized some of those issues. It was me who introduced free school meal for all the primary school children in Tower Hamlets. It was me who reintroduced education maintenance allowance when the Conservative government abolished the education maintenance allowance to give our young people the support. It was me who introduced university bursaries for the young people who wants to have the aspiration and wants to fulfill their dream by going to universities. Those services no longer there. They have been cut by Blue Labour. When I say Blue Labour, Mayor John Biggs, who is Mayor of Tower Hamlets, is actually delivering Conservative manifesto pledges and commitments. If you know, you'll know that the leader of Conservative group always says that Mayor Biggs have borrowed votes to get elected as a mayor. Because I know, because I care about the issue, I haven't come from anywhere else. I always lived in Tower Hamlets, always going to be living in Tower Hamlets, regardless of what happened on 8th of June. I want to serve my community. My community has given me so much, and I want to give something back to my community. When tragic incidents take place in Manchester and in Westminster, our women, especially from the Muslim community, they feel vulnerable, they feel frightened to go out. They feel they may get attacked, our mosques get attacked, but it's the small minority of evils. They have no religion or faith or culture. And we must be united in common cause, fighting those discrimination. Institutional discrimination exists no matter which organization you go into, and the BME community unfortunately is suffering. And as a trade unionist, somebody who represents members every single day in workplaces, no one knows better than me how those people are suffering. When people come to me for help, there's always either black or Asian people coming to me for help. These are the people who needs representation. Jim Fitzpatrick has been Member of Parliament for 20 years and he can't be even bothered to turn up to this debate. He has failed. He has let down this constituency.
Oliver, we will come to that.
And-
It will be a part of the
and
discussion. So
if
if
you
you
elect
continue,
me-
finish your
If you
introduction,
elect
please.
me, if you elect me on 8th of June, you will have a tiger in Parliament rather than a sheep who's falling asleep.
Wow, fantastic. So now comes the question and answer. We have some feedback from the viewers, so which I will periodically and very frequently, rather, be referring to. So we have Dominic Buxton, Joe Bridge, Sheikh Asab, MD Enamul Hassan, Enamul Hassan, all of them raising the same question. Why, particularly Jim, but also Chris? Why Chris is not here and why Jim Fitzpatrick is not here. Jim Fitzpatrick is the defending MP. So that's a question came into everyone's comment. And I suppose Dominic Buxton is Lib Dem.
Yeah.
And so he goes, wow, go Elaine. Okay, right. So we will come to his question.
Up to your
We will
viewing
start.
figures.
we will start with his questions. So he makes the questions, and that was my topic to start with as well. This constituency is about our main fight is economy, main fight is poverty, is about child poverty, is about education and NHS and so on. So start off with that. Firstly, I'm going to, because if Jim were here, I would be starting off with him because he's the defending MP. But at least we have a representative from the government who is here, Tom Randall. So I'll start off with Tom. Tom, how do you give the constituents any hope that things are going to be different? Because what we have seen, and you were mentioning about policing, you were mentioning about several things, and what we have seen is policing has reduced. I mean, we have less police. We have the lunches or the breakfast from the children from the schools has been taken away. We have seen a lot of budget cuts, both in the council level, in every public sector level. How do you give hope to the constituents? I heard your plea about the Brexit, but the constituents are also worried about their everyday issues.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's, you can talk about Brexit and you can talk about these high-level issues, but people are concerned about, how much money they've got in their pocket at the end of the day, whether there's food on the table. You've got a lot of issues in that question. But what I would say is that in terms of economic prosperity, the way that people get money in their pocket, the way that they're satisfied that they can afford to take a holiday or feed their children, is by ensuring that we have sustained economic prosperity, which creates jobs which are well paid, which enables people to become wealthier in a sustained way. Now, I think the long-term economic plan that we have is helping to secure that. It's not so long ago that we had a very damaging recession in this country, which created a lot of economic loss. We're recovering from that. We're making great strides. We're helping the poorest in our society.
How are we recovering if we are reducing budget year on year? Well, I mean, sign of recovery would be that we are increasing public expenditure year on year rather than decreasing in proportion to population, not just increasing £2 where deflation happens and £20 deflation happens and you increase £2. In real terms, you increase £2 budget. In monetary terms, you increase £2, but in real terms, there is no increase. It's pinching everyone's pocket.
Well, look, obviously there has to be, public spending is increasing. It has to increase in a sustained way. But what this government has done is chosen to spend money on issues which it thinks is important and invest money wisely. So, for example, over the course of the next Parliament, health spending will increase £8 billion over the next 5 years because healthcare is important. You talk about free school lunches being cancelled, but that is designed, that is part of a policy. We're going to introduce free school breakfast for everybody so that there is a way of rebalancing the school formula to ensure that there is fair funding
is it
for
good
all
enough
schools.
to say we will introduce in some future the free school breakfast, now you have to stop lunching. Is that good enough?
Well, it's because there is evidence to suggest that if you want to have bright, motivated students who are set up
Don't
for
give
the
them
day,
lunch.
no, there is evidence to suggest that a good breakfast is a good way to start the day. And
Then
the
why
government-
didn't you introduce the breakfast instead
Well,
of
this-
the lunch,
well,
rather
this is-
than
this is-
waiting for future time for breakfast to be served?
This is what we're doing now. So obviously there are a lot of difficult decisions to be made in government, but I think this country is on the right track. We're heading towards economic prosperity, and the danger at this election is that we may be taken off that steady course that we're plotting by people like Jeremy Corbyn, who are going to sort of really wreck the economic recovery which we're heading towards.
Bethan, how much do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's a nonsense to say if you give children breakfast, they're fine. Children need to be fed regularly, in my experience. They need breakfast and lunch. I do a lot of work in my day job. I work with vulnerable migrants, and I do a lot of work helping people. And I have talked to schools before the introduction of free school meals, where I've said to teachers, if you don't give these children a school lunch, they won't eat. And I've arranged for children to have a school lunch because otherwise they wouldn't eat. And children need that. And by cutting the lunches, you will hit the poorest hardest. You talk about having a sustained recovery, but it doesn't seem, it's like you said, that it doesn't seem that we're investing in any public services at all. There's just cuts all the way. And what we're seeing instead is cuts in taxes for large companies, which doesn't seem fair at all. So it's about reprioritising your spending and looking at where the cuts should actually come and what should be funded and what shouldn't. In terms of poverty, I mean, there are so many people who are in working poverty. That's one of the biggest scandals at the moment. People who are earning so little, they're being paid so little in terms of minimum wage or on 0 hours contract, that they're working and still not able to afford to pay their fares into
and the
work
fact that
and for
they
their
are working
childcare.
also goes against them. They can't claim benefit.
Well, the top levels of top-up benefits are very difficult, particularly if you're on a 0 hours contract where your hours change every week, so your income changes every week. You can't plan. Your benefits go up and down or get stopped because then you haven't got the right evidence to give people. It's an absolute scandal. The minimum wage should be increased so it's a proper living wage. People should have more in-work security. 0 hours contracts should definitely not be allowed. I certainly agree with Olia that it's the BME community who get hit hardest. Again, there's been some recent research by the TUC which shows that when you're looking at insecure employment, it's the BME community which are hit disproportionately, particularly the women in the BME community. So that needs sorting out because that's who will get hit when you allow employers to take advantage of
So
people.
what in particular you are suggesting for the community constituency?
Well, I certainly think that you should get rid of 0 hours contracts, most definitely. You should increase the minimum wage, as I said, to a London living wage so that people can live with dignity if they are working.
Your policies are very much, we don't have a Labour representative here today, but your policies are probably what you suggested is pretty much in line with the Labour philosophy rather than the Conservative philosophy.
Our policies are probably much nearer to the Labour policies than Conservatives.
I
We
suppose
differ
it's the
quite.
same for the Lib Dem as well.
Well, they was in coalition with Conservatives, so I'm not too sure about that.
Well,
So no, so-
coalition is one thing, but the policy could be different.
So
The students are still suffering thanks to Lib Dem.
we're
Well,
not.
I will let Elaine defend that.
Thank you. So we're not as, I don't think we're close to either Labour or the Conservatives this time. We're definitely not particularly close to Jeremy Corbyn and his plans to renationalise industries. That's not something that we believe in as Liberal Democrats. In terms of economy and giving people locally hope, one of the biggest issues that we're facing is Brexit. So this constituency has Canary Wharf sat in the middle of it. We have the City of London right on the border. There are growing technology industries in places like Shoreditch in the area. And those are all under threat by the hard Brexit that's being pushed at the moment. Now, whether you voted to leave or you voted to remain in the constituency, I think people want a local MP that is interested in what kind of impact will Brexit have on our area, and is it someone who's going to stand up for me and make sure that we are as protected as we possibly can be from the impacts of Brexit. During this election, I've been and spoken to the 2 European agencies that are currently on Canary Wharf Group, and smaller charities and businesses in the area to talk about what impact they think it will have on them. The European Medicines Agency on Canary Wharf generates 30,000 hotel nights of business for Tower Hamlets every single year. that's all about to disappear because they will definitely be leaving us. And so that then has an impact in terms of, well, those are people that then aren't using our local restaurants of an evening, and it's people that no longer need to be employed in hotels, and it's an entire office building that is suddenly empty. But these are issues that our current MP and our current council are not interested in. So having been and spoken to the two agencies, no one from the current administration has ever been and spoken to them to try and understand what the impact of them leaving is going to be.
So they have their heads in
exactly.
the sand.
It's heads in the sand, partly trying to pretend it's not happening, but also I think just an unwillingness to really get to grips with what is a really complicated issue. But it will hit this borough incredibly hard, and we need to be prepared for it.
You will get your chance to get back on the school and education. I'll go to David now. David, we are discussing about, and you're an entrepreneur, so we were discussing the businesses, and this is probably the most prestigious constituency having the Canary Wharf, right? So being an entrepreneur yourself, how do you see the opportunities in this constituency you can increase, what role you can play?
Well, you're right. I mean, Canary Wharf looks amazing, and it is amazing, but it only benefits a very small area of Poplar and Limehouse. As I've walked the entire constituency, and then I see the Limehouse Business Centre, which is a rundown centre. We're not seeing the innovative incubators of next generation businesses in Poplar and Limehouse. So I think what we need to bring to Poplar and Limehouse is actually more business hubs. The Isle of Dogs, businesses are closing down, they're not coming there. Let's create business centres, new entrepreneurs, but with that comes skills training. A few years ago, I studied why so many people are unemployed or underemployed, and unfortunately the education system's failed them. They don't have the right skills for the new kinds of work. So, and I said to the government back then, I said, you need to invest in these kinds of programmes, and they said, we're not going to fund that. So I funded it myself to show the government how we can do things differently. So I had to put £1 million into developing new types of programmes, of which, well, of course, when I got there, then the government funded a £2 million contract, and we opened these in Newcastle, Glasgow, London. We took long-term unemployed through an innovative programme to get the right skills for the future of employment, and over 54% graduated into work. We had a woman who's 19 years unemployed in Glasgow, now working because she's got the right skills. So we need right incubators for new businesses, and with the right skills training. Because for me, London living wage is not an aspiration. An MP for Popular, we want to raise that bar. We want to say, right, we're going to get you the right training to get you more than the London living wage. And we've got to move the needle that way, not settle for a bar, which I think actually is still too low for an income in this generation.
Thank you. Now, Oliver, we got a comment from Mohammed Enamul Hassan. Your manifesto is similar with Labour and Jeremy Corbyn. Can you give us a little bit of an idea? Is it?
It is. It is more close to Labour and more close to Mr. Corbyn than it will ever be to Conservative, because I see myself as a socialist, and I'm proud of that. I see myself as a trade unionist, and I see myself as a Muslim, which is my faith, and I'm proud of all of those. But if I can come back to your earlier question about Canary Wharf, I live very close to Canary Wharf. I often go there, take my daughter to Canary Wharf, and at 5 o'clock you see rush of people wanting to leave Canary Wharf because none of them live in Poplar and Limehouse or even in Tower Hamlets, for that matter. But we have young graduates. We have young people coming out of Russell Group universities, Cambridge universities, Oxford universities, and we are extremely proud of our young people's achievement. Education in Tower Hamlets is at the moment at the highest level it's ever been. However, those young people are not getting the jobs they deserve in Canary Wharf, but we have this in the heart of this constituency. Those young people have...
Why are they not getting the jobs?
Because as I said earlier on, unfortunately, there is discrimination going on, whether people agree or disagree. But when people are applying, those people are not giving opportunity. When in the past for Tower Hamlets Council, when even the council vacancies to come, we used to give 48 hours window period for residents of Tower Hamlets to apply for those jobs. before we.
Do you believe there should be some quota system?
Well, if you're gonna do a business in Tower Hamlets, and if people have right skills, education, and knowledge, of course they should be given opportunities. But it doesn't. When conservatives sits there and lecture us about how fantastic they're doing, when their former chancellor said it, we are all in it together. Believe me, we are not all in it together, because he doesn't understand what people of Poplar and Limehouse is going through, how much struggle they're having to face to provide for their families and for their children. Some of the parents have to taking a loan, having a mortgage without a house, thanks to Lib Dem, because young people who wants to study, who wants to achieve things, they cannot do it because they're struggling because there is no financial support for our young people. So we can sit here and we can say that we will do X, Y, and Z, but unfortunately, at least two of those colleagues or their party had the opportunity to showcase, to show to people of this country, to show to people of Poplar and Limehouse what they could do. They had their chance and they didn't. What they did, in fact, they let down the people of Poplar and Limehouse. Nick Clegg was too busy wanting to be Deputy Prime Minister rather than serving the needs of young people, serving the needs of our elderly people, who has given so much to this community. And I think if people really want a change, then they want somebody who actually understand, who actually look. Somebody mentioned about mental health. I have a family member who's very close to me, who suffers from mental health. I know what's he like. Yeah, I know my own mother had to live in a living room for several years because of overcrowding. So I know those issues, because these issues are very close to my heart. When you're doing it from your heart, you're going to deliver and you're going to fight with your every breath that you have, rather than just sitting here and lecturing that your party will do X, Y, and Z. Until recently, Lib Dem didn't rule out that they're not going to go into coalition with Conservative again.
That's
we
politics.
did right at the beginning of the campaign. We said we wouldn't go into coalition with either Labour or the Conservatives. Tim Farron said right when it kicked off.
We know when he said it.
Okay, now it's time for some questions from the audience. So we have live audience here today at the stage. Gentleman on my left, please. Please take the mic. And
hello, my name's Ruhul. I live locally. My question is to all the candidates: how do you plan to tackle institutional racism? Thank you.
So, how do you plan to tackle institutional racism? We'll start from David.
I think
you have because we are short in time. We have half the program left only, so we will go quickly.
A quick answer.
Yeah.
For me, it's how we deliver programs. So I mentioned we opened training programs previously. We made sure each program was a blend of each community, different ages, different social backgrounds, different faiths, working together. The common bond is we're in this together. Let's get out, and that forms. You start to find out people who you thought you would never like, but by actually interacting and being involved together, that changes people's worldviews. So I think it's how we engage through programs and how we blend them with the community.
Engagement.
It's got to be engagement.
Bethan?
I think it's a very gradual process, and it certainly takes time. Some of the institutional racism in our institutions has been there a very long time. I think you need to change the views of some young people about whether some jobs are right for them. I remember working with the Children's Society a few years ago where they did something called Look Good in Blue, where they took young women from minority ethnic communities and took them around the police and introduced them to different roles that the police play and made them think about, could this actually be a career for me? And I think changing people's ideas about who does what is quite important as a starting point for some of that.
Fantastic. Tom?
Okay, I think one of the first things we need to do is understand the scale of the problem. So what this government is going to do in the next parliament, if it's re-elected, is to conduct an audit of the public sector to get a better understanding of who from the BME communities are at each level of the public sector, and also to extend that to larger private sector organisations. And what that should do is help us build up a picture of how people from...
Is that, does it mean that you have absolutely no idea what scale of institutional racism is at the moment?
Well, I think what we need to do, I mean, obviously there are sort of differential outcomes if you are from an ethnic minority background, there can be sort of differential outcomes from your education experience or from training or in the workplace. Those obviously need to be tackled, but one of the ways that we can do that is by actually getting the data to understand where are people from ethnic minority backgrounds in terms of how they've progressed, in terms of how their seniority.
So we will do an audit. You don't have anything substantive right now to say, other than we will do an audit.
Well,
and
this
then
is
we
the
will
sort
come
of
up with
thing.
a
Well, if
plan.
this is the sort of thing that hasn't been done before in, say, in either the public or private sector, that will be a key piece of work in order to get a good understanding of what the situation is, and then
we get the essence. So
and
let's
then we
move
can
on, because
build
there is
on that.
nothing more is coming in that.
Okay.
Then we will do an audit. Elaine.
So we want to make sure that all companies have very strong whistleblowing policies, so that if you do feel that you are a victim of racism or any other kind of discrimination, that you have a very clear course of action within your company, whether it's public or private sector, to make that known, and that you will not be punished for raising that as an issue. Olia made a really good point about there is plenty of research that shows if you have two CVs that are absolutely identical and you send one into a job application with John Smith on the top and one with Olia Rahman at the top, John will get the interview and the Olia Rahman one won't, because of that kind of institutional discrimination. So we want to bring in name blind applications, so when you apply for a job, none of those kind of details will be included, and so therefore that should make it much harder for people to discriminate on that level.
Should it be done on gender as well?
Yeah, I think it should. Well, name blind across the board to try and get rid of unconscious bias on every kind of level. And then finally, when we were in coalition, Jo Swinson, who was a minister, one of the things that she brought in was reporting of companies' gender pay gap, to try and essentially shame companies that were paying women vastly differently from the men that were working for them. We want to bring that in for the...
Surprisingly, that happens.
Exactly.
From the very top.
But it also happens with the BME community, so we want to bring it in there as well. So if you're a company where you're employing over 250 people, whether you're public or private sector, we will get you to publish what you pay your BME employees and what you pay your non-BME employees.
But don't you think that's going to be an intrusion to privacy for a lot of companies?
No, because it will be collated information, so it will be the average
For
essentially.
statisticals.
But also we want to make it so that you as an individual can demand that information to check whether or not you are being paid fairly, because we think that I think there's a saying which is something like sunlight is the best kind of disinfectant, and rooting that kind of behaviour out, we hope would stop
Principle. Olia.
I think first of all we have to accept that there is an institutional racism, because unless you accept it, you can't deal with it. You have to agree there is a problem before you start addressing it, and obviously some people are in denial that there is a problem or don't even know about it. As a trade unionist, I said earlier on, I see this every single day of my working life, where people are being discriminated, people are being bullied because of color of their skin or their religion. And what I think that every workplace should have a trade union representative that people can talk to confidentially, can get the support that they need, which is something that this government is not very keen on. Also, I think when the CV is taken, I agree with the point Elaine has made, that if there is no name, if you're just looking at the content of individual who's applying for the job, you'll have a fair judgment rather than you are able to discriminate. But it's not just only the BME community, but also the women get discriminated. If you look at the city today, how many women are the directors or the chief executive or the board of directors? The Conservative representative can sit here and say, we're going to do this. Well, you've been in government for so long. What have you done?
But can I come back to you very quickly? I picked something you mentioned in the very beginning. And so this is a question to you. You mentioned a lot of the ethnic minorities, black and Asians, approach you in your history of your being a trade unionist and so on. Why haven't a lot of white people approach you?
Because
why don't you have that connectivity with everybody?
No, you do have that connectivity with everybody. However, what I said is that those people face more discrimination, and those people come to me or go to other union representative for more help, because of the issues and the bullying they face in their workplaces.
Cool. Right, we will go back to the audience for further questions.
Okay, would the candidates support Trump, a state visit by Trump, for Trump to this country?
That's a heated topic. Would the candidates support a state visit of Trump to, to this constituency or the country, to the country? So we'll start from the right. So Oliver.
I think Mr. Trump speak a lot of rubbish. He was outrageous when he tried to prevent some of the Muslims entering from certain countries. I salute Siddiq Khan on that when he said that he will make a special measure for him to attend, and he said he will refuse to attend. I think it was a very noble stand that he took. However, I think we have to be above and better than him. We have to show the Muslim community is not what he is portraying to the world. The Muslim community is tolerant, respectful, and respectful of other
you're
communities.
going into a
So-
long
no, no,
narrative. So
I'm not
this is
going.
very quickly.
I'm not going
Are you
into.
going to protest against his coming to this
Well,
country?
I don't think he should. I don't think he should have a state visit. However, I think he should come and see how the Muslim community in this country are.
Elaine.
No, he absolutely shouldn't be invited on a state visit. He's said deplorable things about women, the Muslim community, anyone who is not like him. He doesn't like. He has tweeted some incredibly awful things towards Siddiq Khan since the attacks in London at the weekend. And him being invited here on a state visit is, I feel, is us as a country and our Prime Minister saying, it's okay that you say that and it's acceptable how you behave, and actually I don't accept that at all. And if he does end up coming on a state visit, I know they're talking about moving it up to Balmoral so that, because they reckon he can't be protested in London, well, I can travel to Balmoral or wherever else they try and send him. And I'm also one of the people that signed a petition to say that if he does come on a state visit, then Tower Hamlets as a council shouldn't pay any money towards that happening, whether he visits this borough or not.
Tom.
Yes, but providing he doesn't tweet while meeting the Queen.
Bethan.
Yes, I mean, he's such a divisive figure. Why would we want to pay all that money to protect him during a state visit when we've got enough problems with policing at the moment anyway? It would be a waste of money. We don't want him here.
But don't you think... Okay, well, let me finish up with David.
I think it is a tough one because people are elected by the people in their country. So he's an elected leader of the United States. So it's very easy for us to sit here and say, you know, we should never let that person in. But I think we have to have dialogue and relations with all countries. And actually, we don't agree with all views. I don't agree with the views that he's expressing, which is why I want to get him in a room so I can actually speak one-to-one and actually we have dialogue. So I think, obviously, we don't want people preaching hatred in our country, but we have to respect the fact he is an elected leader of the states, and actually by having dialogue is the only way we can tackle that. Not you're never coming to our country, but let him fund.
Not a state visit. I said he's allowed to come, but not a state visit.
Perhaps on a state visit, all of the candidates of Limehouse and Poplar should
Poplar and Limehouse.
Poplar and Limehouse should invite him to come here and demonstrate to him that how harmoniously we do live here. You know, and show him the other side of his views or prejudices.
I think Donald Trump is impervious
That's not
to
going to
evidence.
change. Okay, right. So it's a failed try. Any questions from the audience? Please feel free to raise your hand. We have two hands, so we'll take from my left first, and then we will come on the right.
Hi, I'm Harry, local resident. Theresa May said enough is enough. Poplar and Limehouse is a wonderfully diverse community. What are your plans to tackle what she identifies as quiet tolerance of people with slightly more hardline views, and some would also say a perversion of Islam? How would you deal with that and foster a stronger society and community here in Poplar and Limehouse?
Very important question, because that's the I think run up to the election, the biggest thing which is happening are these heinous, horrific attacks, and that pulls stresses mostly the relationship between people, amongst communities, between communities, race and religion, in this constituency and the other, especially in London the most. So what are your views? How do you guys all propose? So we'll start from David.
Obviously, we've got to deal with the challenges we face right now. So we do need the police, we do need the engagement at that level, but also then we need to invest in the fact we've shut down 24 youth centres in Poplar over 12 months, there's only 8 left. ASB's gone up, knife crime's gone up, so actually we need to invest in the future by actually engaging and creating projects that actually gives us that engagement, not shut the project down and use austerity as an excuse. It's not. We need to invest in these programs and projects, otherwise these things are just going to get worse. We won't have the engagement we need to create the future we actually need to get to.
Did you get your answer? I don't want to change, because I have given a narrative. I don't want your question to be changed.
How do you bring a society together which at times does feel divided, especially in Poplar Limehouse, without scapegoating certain people? And it's not as easy to say, let's spend lots of money. I mean, how do you actually do that in a creative way? Someone identify prevent. What would you be saying we could do? It's easy to just say, let's spend lots of money rebuilding youth centres. What was another alternative that you could say, look, the government's got it wrong here?
But I think actually people I'll ever hear about the reason we shut down the projects because they weren't any good. So actually we need to create, not to spend money, actually we need to innovate better projects, empower the community to create them themselves. I'm involved in a project in Aldgate where we're getting people from the residents to actually, we're going to win the funding, they're going to then deliver the project and bring the community with them. So let's not import people to deliver these programs, let's get the community to deliver the program.
Cool, we will move on because we do have a restriction of time. Bethan?
I'm not sure you can say there's quiet tolerance of some of these views. If you look at the people who reported the Manchester bomber, they were in the Muslim community. There's been a very interesting documentary a little while ago about some preachers who were preaching in the name of Islam, apparently, who wouldn't go and stand outside East London Mosque because they knew they'd get abuse there from the Muslims there. Yeah. The most extreme views we've had in this community have come from Britain First, and I was part of some of the All Faith group who went and stood outside the mosque with the Muslims there and said, no, we don't want any of this hatred in our communities.
Tom?
Okay, well, it's a difficult subject to tackle. I think we should first of all, we've actually had a good track record on this so far. The security services have managed to foil lots of plots over the past years, and obviously what we've seen in Manchester and London recently are horrible, and they will shock.
Let me just set the scene right. I think the question is more about the underlying human relationship, which is under stress, rather than the surgical operation required here and there. Yeah. I think the question is of the
well, there was a question about how we sort of tackle this, and I think one of the issues that we face in society at the moment is that people have access to material which they are becoming radicalised by. We see, for example, big computer companies like YouTube have videos on them which people are watching and are being influenced by. People are connecting using Facebook and Twitter to spread quite sort of horrible views. Now, one of the things that we can do is try to shut that down so that people don't have access to the sort of extremist ideology.
But that will be freedom of...
Well, it's
who
not...
Who decides what is appropriate?
There is freedom of speech in this country, but you don't have freedom to incite terrorism. You don't have freedom to incite violence. These are crimes. And if
no question about it. But my question is, any dissenting views can be taken as...
Well, I think within limits, and I think if people are inciting extremist ideology on mainstream media platforms such as YouTube, they shouldn't be doing that.
This is the most alarming thing is I have heard, haven't seen it myself, I have heard that there are advertisements of ISIS online. I mean, if so, those who are carrying those advertisements, they should be stopped. Shouldn't they be?
Well, indeed, and I think one of the ways that we tackle this is by ensuring that people do not have access to the material and as it's too early to say exactly what's happened with the most recent attacks, but a pattern appears to be emerging where people are accessing material online, are becoming radicalised by that, and are then committing horrible crimes. So I think one of the ways that we tackle this problem is by shutting that material down at source.
But is that not too simplistic? Is that not the narrative we are hearing and trying to fix for the last 15 years? Rather, the new narrative by Corbyn is if you leave unattended or ungoverned territories across the world, like you have in Syria, you have in Libya, if you leave those things like that ungoverned, and then if you work with people like, you know, this Ebadi, the Manchester, the criminal, if you work with them, because he had a connection with the British government at the time of removing Gaddafi, right? So if you empower those kind of people, they will come and backfire. So don't you think that we need to look at the narrative, what we were talking about, what you're suggesting, because we are looking at that for the last 50 years?
Well, I think if you look at the bigger picture as well, we're actually better at this than we think. If you look at, there was a lot of radicalisation going on in the so-called Islamic State. They're having a lot of success radicalising people on the continent. When they try and radicalise British citizens to commit terrorist acts in Britain, they're not.
But it is the MI5 who was giving them arms a few years back.
Hang on a minute. They're finding that it's very difficult to find British people to act as to commit terrorist acts in Britain, and I think that goes a long way to show that in this country we talk about, you know, race relations, a harmonious community, defeating extremism, and these are real issues. But I think we also need to recognise that actually, compared with how things are going in other countries, we have actually got a very good record of having a very harmonious community in which extremism does have a very limited outlet. But what we do need to do is make sure that where it does occur, and as I say, it doesn't occur perhaps as widely as some people might like to think, but it does occur in some pockets, and where it does occur, we need to shut down those avenues for it to spread into the public consciousness, so that you know, lone people can access this material and be radicalised by it.
Understand, but just one point is things are getting worse every day. Things are not getting any better. So we need to fix something. We are definitely doing things wrong the way we are doing it. Elaine.
And so I agree with Bethan's point earlier about the fact that the people involved in the Manchester attack had been reported by the community, but nothing was done about it. And there's a story that's come out in the past couple of days about 130 imams that are refusing to do the funeral prayer for the people that committed the attacks on Saturday night. My worry with the narrative around enough is enough and that kind of conversation is that it's not, people are susceptible to this material, and there is something that has caused that to happen. It's not that they just kind of go and find it and then all of a sudden that's when they're radicalised. It's something has happened which makes them more susceptible to it, and I think it's more they are made to feel they are not part of our society, and they are made to feel that they are not welcome. And I think the narrative that's coming out at the moment, the narrative that we've had since Brexit, is making that worse. And so more and more people are finding that they are susceptible to the material that's out there. So I think it's dealing with that rather than attempting to police the internet, because you're right, where does it stop? At the moment, this is the thing that the government doesn't like anyone talking about, but then what's next? And it's a never-ending road that I don't want us to be going down. So we want to do things, like I said earlier, about getting rid of the prevent strategy. We think that has been incredibly divisive in a lot of communities, and we want to move away from that whole idea of it's a community or it's a group of people that are wrong, and that we need to monitor what they're doing in order to make sure that they don't do anything, and move far more towards community policing and making sure that people feel they have a stake in our society. So again, with things like stop and search, it's always BME men that are stopped far more than anyone else. And again, I think that plays towards that narrative of you are a problem and we are going to fix you. And I think that's part of the issue that drives people towards these more extreme groups.
I think the question was in two parts. First of all, what we're going to do in Poplar and Limehouse, and about the enough is enough issue Theresa May has raised. Can I say Poplar and Limehouse actually come long way. We recall there used to be a BNP councillor elected in Millwall ward during 1992, and there's people sitting in your audience who was pioneers at that time. Everybody came together, black and white, people of faith and none, people of different sexuality. Everybody came together and he stood unitedly and fought those BNPs out of Tower Hamlets, and they never came back again. And I think that unity and that strength is still there, because he can go and talk to many non-BME people, non-Muslim people, which I'm sure all of us do. And you know, they're positive towards the Muslim community, is very good and very tolerant and very positive. But I'll tell you one thing, that I am really fed up when the right-wing media and the right-wing politician expect every time something happens that every single Muslim should stand up and condemn that. No, I am not going to do it, because I did not do this. I do not support this evil act. But I'll tell you something different. When a child is bombed in Palestine, I don't see any government ministers is standing up and condemning. When child is bombed in Syria, when hundreds of people are bombed in Afghanistan, I don't see any government ministers or any Christian community being asked to stand up, or any priest or any representative from the church has been asked to, you must stand up and condemn such action. So why is it it's different for when it comes to the Muslim community? You know, it's not the Muslim community. Some of them, they either converted.
We can go into that heated debate.
No, it's not heated
okay, I'll
debate.
give you 30 seconds.
It's not heated debate. It's the fundamental issue, because we have a two-tier system in this country.
Double standard.
Exactly. And long as we have that, you know, look, I said it long before the Iraq war, long before I got elected as a councillor. If you set fire in other people's country, that will come and haunt you. And unfortunately, I regrettably say this, you know, with a lot of regret, that this is what is happening, because we have to have decent foreign policies. We cannot keep go and start bombing other countries.
Sounds to me you're very much in tune with Jeremy Corbyn's policies, and there is a remark from Mr. Khalis Ahmed who says your manifesto is very near to Labour and Jeremy Corbyn. Then why are you not supporting Jim Fitzpatrick, and why did you stand?
Because Jim Fitzpatrick is just he's a Labour just by name.
Right.
He doesn't support his own leader. He doesn't support his leader's own manifesto and pledges. So he's not a Labour. You know, Mr. Jim Fitzpatrick said at the last election this will be his last term. He's standing again because I guess he wants to have the full package of his pension rather than just disappear now. But if I'm sure he's going to say he's not going to stand again. So if he's not going to stand again, do you really think that he's going to work as hard as me if I get elected? Because he's not going to come to your door asking for votes in 5 years' time.
Well, it matters what the constituents will believe. So we will come to Mr. Siraj.
Brexit. Conservative foreign minister portrayed or even publicized very seriously 350 million will be injected to NHS. It is conservative government and he is part of the same government, he is foreign minister. How much have you injected into NHS?
How much money will be injected in NHS?
Well, he said that will be injected.
Yeah.
But how much did you do in practical terms?
So this is the question for everybody. So what do you think should be injected?
First goes to conservative.
So, right, Tom.
Well, thank you. Well, the government has proposed a promised £8 billion additional spending on the National Health Service over the next Parliament. The number that you saw on the side of the bus, it reflected the gross figure that we send to Brussels every year, and I think it was designed as an illustration of how that money could be better spent. Now, what the government is proposing to do, we have a number of subsidies which come, which we pay into the European Union, which the European Union pays back to us, because we are a net contributor to the European Union at the moment. But after Brexit is achieved, we will set up a shared prosperity fund, so that money which would have come back from the European Union to Britain, which at the moment is not particularly well allocated in terms of its sort of administration, will be allocated by the government in a fair way. And obviously Boris is going to go back for Britain if the Conservatives are re-elected on Thursday, and secure a good Brexit deal. Because what's key here, we are going to leave the European Union. That's going to happen. What we need to do is make sure that we have a government which can actually go and negotiate with 27 EU leaders and get a good deal for Britain. Now, I think Theresa May and Boris and the team can do that. I'm not so sure about people like Jeremy Corbyn Diane Abbott, John
Before
McDonnell.
we go to the Jeremy Corbyn, I got some questions because you started off the whole conservative theory of debating or negotiating with EU started off on the footing that it's all hush hush. We are not going to share with anybody. We are not going to have any public debate about it. We are not going to even have a parliament discussion about it. And we are going to just go and do some deal. I mean, that didn't help. So it left us in the dark, and we are still at the dark. We don't know what is there on the table. We don't know what we are negotiating about.
Well, the
So,
government.
I mean,
the
how,
government-
how do you guarantee that things are going to change or get any
well,
better?
the government has published a white paper setting out what it hopes to achieve.
But where is the
for-
discussion about it? There is no public engagement.
Well-
Wasn't it the responsibility of the party in power to ensure enough engagement from the academia, from the people, from the stakeholders in that discussion? That didn't happen in the UK.
Well, we're having an election on Thursday when you can decide who you think will be best to take
Without
forward
any discussion on what Brexit
Well,
should
we're
be.
having a
But-
discussion tonight, aren't we?
But
so
sorry,
we can have that discussion. We're going what we're going to decide on Thursday is who we think is best placed to take Brexit forward. And I say that out of the teams available to us, Theresa May and her team are best placed to go to bat for Britain in Brussels against the EU 27 and try to secure a good deal. Now, obviously, that's going to be a negotiation. It's going to be tough. We're going to set out our best position, and we're going to negotiate.
We
with
have
the
seen
EU.
enough of the negotiation already. We can predict what is going to happen if you guys are there. But, you know, that's life.
But
We will accept
Well,
whatever the
you-
election
can-
happens.
can-
on
can-
the
can-
day.
can-
Can I say something?
But we will come
I
to
think-
Olio.
I
He's
think-
quite frantically moving his arm and wants to say something.
I think Tom is actually misleading the viewers. People are not voting on Brexit on Thursday. They're voting who run this country. Now, none of us know, and the viewers certainly don't know, the voters don't know what Theresa May is going to agree. Now, would you commit here, front of the audience, front of the viewers, whatever the agreement, Theresa May, if she does get elected, which I hope she doesn't, but if she does get elected, whatever the agreement she comes back with from Brussels, she's going to put that to vote to the people of this country.
Well, it's a very surprisingly Europhile statement from a self-proclaimed Corbynista. But look, what we're going to do at this election is to get a mandate to go to Brussels to negotiate a deal. That's what we need to do. And we're going to leave the European Union. People have voted to leave. We need to get the best deal that we can. Now, we can't predict what that deal is going
What
to
about
be.
the argument? I mean, Bethan made an argument in the very beginning that if you haven't read your contract clearly, you didn't have independent advice even before you buy your house, for an example, you must have an independent advice, and that the people who voted for Brexit were not given proper advice.
Well, we're having an election to secure the mandate so that Theresa May can go to Brussels and say, look, I've had an election, I've got a mandate from the people to negotiate based on the government's white paper.
Very much liked by European.
That's
Is Jeremy Corbyn more liked by the
That's
Europeans?
typical.
I think he will come across very humble, and they will all welcome him.
So let's hear from an entrepreneur's viewpoint. David.
I think for me, we've got to look at what's right for Poplar and Limehouse and the people that live here as well. So the reason I'm standing, I mean, I call myself a centrist independent. I mean, when New Labour was here, centre ground politics for me is always the healthiest politics. It thinks about people and business working better. Labour went very left, so I couldn't stand. I mean, for 2 years I've been working out where to stand and nearly went Labour, but they went too left for me. And then the Conservatives, unfortunately, last year collapsed the child poverty unit. And that to me showed you're not committed to this. So I decided not to stand with the Conservatives. So it left me to stand as an independent. I think it's a benefit because if I got elected, whoever's in government, Labour or Conservative, I am able to, that's a good idea, let's move on that, we can work together. Oh, that's a bad idea, I cannot get whipped. And it's the whipping of MPs to be forced to do something because they might lose their job. I don't have that. I'll be representing Poplar and Limehouse and what we need, opposing where required, but backing where it's good. And I think that's a benefit for Poplar and Limehouse.
Fantastic. Guys, we are coming to the very end of our show. Now we are going to go with every candidate. They're going to make their pitch for your vote. Before that, we can take questions if you have any from the audience. We have someone new to ask a question, please.
Okay, so at the moment in Tower Hamlets, something that concerns me deeply as a local resident is that there aren't enough parks for the children to play in that are safe. I know that we all need land to build housing, but I think we also need safe places for the children to play. When I grew up in Tower Hamlets as a child, my mum used to say if I knocked on the door I wasn't allowed out again. That's how safe it was, and I would be out playing in the summer holidays till 8 or 9 in the night and I was completely safe.
Yeah.
But now I can't allow, well, my children are a bit grown up, but I know with my neighbours' children, for example, they're not allowed out to play in the street.
Yeah.
So if you were to be elected and become my MP, what would you do so that children have safer places to play in Tower Hamlets and maybe create more green spaces?
And breathe well.
That's a very relevant question for you. Anyone wants to attend?
Can I
So,
go on? He's always government representative. I
Well,
guess.
no, this is point one of
but
Chris
very,
Wilford's.
very short,
Of-
please.
This is point one of Chris Wilford's 3-point plan for Poplar Limehouse. There has been a problem, particularly on the Isle of Dogs, of overdevelopment, where we've had these big tower blocks, lots of housing being built, but what we haven't had in conjunction with that is the infrastructure which supports it, which is things like parks, open spaces, the public realm. Now, if we're going to have sustainable development, and one of the reasons why you have lots of young families in the Isle of Dogs who then leave the area, and Ollie was talking about this earlier about seeing people leaving Canary Wharf. Well, of course they do, because we don't have the schools here for people to send their once you get past primary school, you can't send your children to a school because there aren't enough schools here, there aren't enough parks, there isn't enough infrastructure surrounding this housing, and this has been one of the key problems of the Labour Council, and it's a shame that Jim isn't here to defend Labour's record on this. But what we need to do is really address this issue to have sustainable development. If we have sustainable development, we can have sustainable communities so that children can go out to play safely.
Can I just say something on there? What Tom said, that a lot of the developments, and I can say this as a local councillor, that has been rejected by Tower Hamlets Council, but when Boris Johnson was the mayor, he actually used his executive power to approve those buildings to go up. So, Tom can sit here and say very nicely that, we want all this development not to go up, but it was his mayor who actually approved those development to take place. But can I touch on 18 youth centres has been closed down. It's actually 18, David. 18 youth centres has been closed down in Tower Hamlets. Young people don't have anywhere to go. The knife crime on rise every single day. Every single day, our young people are losing lives. I'm sorry, and I say this with a lot of respect, and you have one politician in the audience, she was there fighting, but none of those politicians was fighting when youth centres was closing down. I didn't certainly see them. They didn't speak out. Maybe there was a silent speaker, but they didn't certainly speak out powerfully and passionately as they should have done. Our young people are the leaders of tomorrow. They are the people who's going to take this community forward. They are the next elected representative going to come on board, and we have to support them. We have to provide for
parks.
them.
Let's go to the parks.
So the developments, look, we need housing. Housing is one of the biggest crises, but we have to be innovative. When developers come into Tower Hamlets or in Poplar Limehouse to develop, we have to have a robust negotiations with them that you have to do it our way, otherwise we will not work with you. And I have seen it. It can happen. We have seen, if you go in some parts of Poplar Limehouse, for example, Lansbury, you will see there's some developments, but middle of the buildings, you have nice park, you have benches, you have gardens where people can go and sit and children can play secure, safe and sound. And these are the kind of places that I want to see, and these are the kind of places that I will fight for.
Thank you. Elaine?
So first of all, I think part of it is protecting the parks that we already have. So I live right near Bartlett Park, which is slowly but surely being built all on the edge of. So making sure that actually we're not building on what we already have and reducing the small amount that we've already got. And one of the things as well for me, as your local MP, is holding our local mayor and our local council to account. So last year I did a freedom of information request around things that are called Section 106 money and the Community Infrastructure Levy. So that's money that our council gets from these people that are putting up all of these skyscrapers that you and I can't afford to live in. The Tower Hamlets Council last year had £7 million of that money sat in a bank account that it wasn't doing anything with and that it hadn't invested in our community. And I want to make sure that actually they are being robustly held to account about that, and that when developers are coming and things are getting signed off by the mayor's office, whether that's our mayor or London mayor, that actually we make sure that money we get is properly invested in things like parks and the upkeep of the parks we have already. The Lib Dems used to run the council up until 1994. Some of our parks, the fences haven't been painted since we lost power. I know because the person that picked the paint has shown me and said it's still the same colour. So making sure that we're looking after what we already have, but that we are still investing and making sure that we have a more vibrant community and that the ones we've got are safe as well.
Bertha.
Ensuring that we have green spaces is one of our major policies in the Green Party. We know how valuable green spaces are, particularly in inner city communities. And in this area, we don't have anywhere near enough. I think it's terrible that one of our few green spaces in this area, King Edward Memorial Park, is being built over partly for the super sewer, which now looks as though it's going to take much longer than they said originally. So already part of our green space is being taken up. We build on every patch of land that's available, and yet you say we need more housing. None of the housing ever seems to go to anyone in the borough. It all seems to be bought out by investors from outside. Yes, we need housing, but it needs to be built for people in the community. It needs to be affordable housing for people in the community, and it needs to take into account the green spaces around here and make sure that those are protected as well.
David?
I think for me, it's as an MP, it's not about representing Poplar Limehouse in Parliament. It's also working as a team with the mayor, with the councillors, with the residents. I think too often, all I keep hearing is we vote and then they're not here for the next 4 years. So for me, it's actually not. It's not just holding a surgery. It's working with the mayor, working with the council, working together. And again, going back to being an independent MP, again, Red's not playing off blue political points, going, it won't happen, because actually there's an agenda of the common good for everybody, and that's why I feel I can better represent the residents.
I form a part of the constituency in that I work here, and I attend a community every Friday for congregational prayer within the constituency. What I am aware that this small community place, which was leased to them, the charity or not-for-profit organization, they they're paying rent to council for 25,000 or 20,000 4 years back. Now suddenly the rent has been hiked to £90,000 a year.
Yeah.
So can I get something from everybody to suggest what they would do, how they would support this community house in the middle of Isle of Dogs if you become the MP? So I'll let Oliver start.
This is a very recent issue because the community organization never had to pay so much rent thanks to Labour Blue Mayor increasing those rents. But those community organizations provide vital services from welfare advice to counseling for elderly people, for single parents. Our voluntary organization was a vibrant community providing some of the services, especially when people have been attacked by the policies from Conservative, because people don't know where to go and seek their advice. A lot of people cannot hire expensive lawyers or solicitors, when they're given notice to vacate their property or their benefit being stopped.
How you're going to make sure that they can get back to the reduced rent?
What has to happen is that there has to be more challenge towards the Labour administration in Tower Hamlets. The community has to be united. It's not just the...
Tell me how you're going to make sure that these people who are paying now 90,000 instead of 20,000 as rent a year, how you're going to help to reduce it to 20,000 back?
Basically, as I was explaining to you before you interrupted me, is that we have to work together. because what is happening at this moment, the mayor
Who decides this? This is mayor.
the mayor
Who
is
takes the decision?
mayor is deciding.
Right.
None of the Labour councillors saying anything, apart from the opposition. None of the Conservative councillors saying anything, and the community feel that they are not getting support from their MP or from their councillor to come forward to protest. If I'm elected as Member of Parliament, I will tell those organisations not to pay those rent, and let's challenge the mayor and let's challenge the council, because this organisation should have rent-free premises for the service they deliver for free of charge to our
And
community.
you would do that for all the community centres, not just a
Absolutely.
single one. I mean, that affects
Well,
me,
in my
but
constituency.
I'm sure there are other community centres in the constituency as well. Really.
Yeah, so it's something that's affected people across the borough and a number of organisations. I think part of it is things like the money that I've mentioned that the council has just had in a bank account that it's not used. That could have been used to ease the pressure on the rents. But as a party, one of the things that we want to do is to stop the cuts to local government that there have been. So there have been huge cuts to things like the social care money that comes from national government into local government, and that has meant that all councils across the country are under pressure and have looked for where they can get money from other places in order to make sure they can provide social care. Now, I'm not saying that the decisions that this council made were right, but I can understand some of the pressure that they were under. So one of the things that we want to do is, for example, making sure social care is properly funded through the NHS. We want to give councils more fundraising powers. So all of these homes that are in Tower Hamlets that are sat empty because they're owned by foreign investors, we want to give councils the power to put a 200% council tax rate on those, and then councils can use that money either to build more affordable housing or to invest in local community projects such as that, so that it isn't such a zero-sum game for councils, and because at the moment they have very few places where they can get money from, and so we want to change that to make it a little bit easier for everyone.
Tom?
I'm afraid I don't know the specific problems that you're facing, so I can't sort of comment on that specific
But it's
example.
a community centre, right?
Sure.
It's in Tiller Road, right?
Okay.
If I'm not
Well,
mistaken.
it's all the community centres. Basically, the
Yeah.
mayor has just put the rent
Okay.
up.
But I think there are two ways of approaching this sort of general issue. One is, as Elaine outlines, there has been a bizarre reluctance by this council to spend community infrastructure levy money, and where that money has been spent, it's been spent in very sort of haphazard, bizarre ways. To give an example, there's a development in Blackwall and Cubic Town called City Island, which has just gone up. It's near Canning Town Station. The money raised from that community infrastructure levy has been spent refurbishing a railway station in Hackney Wick, which is, but people in City Island are never going to use that station. So there's this whole sort of bizarre way this money has been spent, if it has been spent at all. I know a lot of community infrastructure levy has been spent refurbishing the scanning machines in libraries, which I would have thought is something that, you know, the council should have been spending its own resources on. So I think there's money available to be used on resources for the community, which can be spent. The second way of tackling this issue is to tackle the legacy of misgovernment in the council. We have had a long history of mismanagement in this council. Sadly, Tower Hamlets Council is still a byword for a laughing stock in terms of bad management. It's partially a legacy of the Lutfer Rahman era, when a lot of corrupt payments were made to various people. It's a situation I think
that
makes
era
us
ended like 5 years
well,
back.
it's I think it has
2
technically
years, right?
it has technically ended, but I think there is still a legacy in terms of the operation of the council which has not yet been fully resolved. Now it may be or may not be because Labour isn't here tonight. They may have started to take those steps to address some of those issues, but I think there are still deep structural problems.
More corrupt
with-
than Lutfer Rahman you talk about.
Well,
So let me ask them quickly.
so
that-
if I may just finish
pause?
that point,
Please, yes.
you know, and I think if we're going to have the sort of money that we want, we have to run this council in an efficient way, and one of the ways that we do that is by tackling that sort of legacy of misgovernance.
Can I ask you a question? Would you support Mayor getting £10,000 pay rise and giving your group leader 11.9% pay rise when he's increasing rents for private community centres?
It's a shame, I suppose. It's something
It's a marriage of
the
convenience
constituents are going to
between
be.
mayor and opposition.
So
Mayor and Conservative.
So, right. Wanted to ask a quick question to the audiences. Any show of hands to suggest that things are any better now or things were better before in terms of the era of Lutfur Rahman and the era of John Biggs?
Even worse.
Quick show of hands, who believes that things are worse now?
Worse.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 hands out of 11, 9. Right. It's pretty much unanimous, Tom, that things were a lot better than John Biggs' era now.
Well, we're going to go into a free and fair election on Thursday, which hasn't been rigged, and I think that is a major step forward for Tower
I'm
Hamlets.
sure it won't be rigged.
Yeah, we're talking about the corruption, the services. We're talking about two different things, isn't it? We're not talking about election. We're talking about the people, how people have been served.
So why don't you take the mic? And,
Yeah, we're talking
Repeat
about
your
how
point.
people have been served and services provided, whether it was corrupt as now or before. That's what if you compare, I would say the present council is totally valueless and they are fully corrupt. Okay,
Right,
and mayor doesn't know what he's doing.
Let me give an item. I mean, that was a show of public opinion directly, for you. Let me give you an example. There is a rich mix. The Tower Hamlets, rich mix council. This is what I know about.
Total corruption.
Tower Hamlets council dropped a case for worth of
800.
a million
Or close to
against,
million.
against rich mix, or maybe more. I think it was several million. But anyway, I'm not going to quote wrong. But let's say 800,000, whatever. Why would they even drop
So basically, what he
those
did,
kind of charges?
some
or
of the colleagues, I don't know,
cases?
Elaine, you might be
Same
aware of
day
it.
he got
Yeah, I am.
They dropped. Not only did he drop it, actually, the
They-
rich mix actually owed council that money. It was money belonged to the people of Tower Hamlets.
Public money.
However, when
And
Mr.
they wrote it off.
Let me say, when Mr. Big came elected as a mayor, because he has friends in Rich Mix, Labour politician sits on the committee of Rich Mix. What he done, because it's a loan that they need to repay, instead of he's actually asking them to pay that money, he gave them 1.5 million of our money to Rich Mix, and then they saying, oh, they will pay it from there. So even if they pay it from there, they're still making surplus, they're still making profit. But Mayor Biggs had no right to do that, because that was the money of this borough and belongs to people of this borough.
Yeah.
Some of the services that we talked about, we can do a lot with 1.5 million in this community, but we wasn't allowed. I had to challenge vigorously even to get the information, and even to date I still don't have some of the
I
information.
have to stop you there
Problem
because
is
we have
people
to.
of money
Can
wasn't
I just
smart
talk a
enough.
bit
Yes,
about the
yes,
council?
I
So
will.
I don't want to talk
Fix it.
about the rich mix issue, but
So
I do want to talk
could I
about
please-
the council in terms of. So we had a councillor defect to us from Labour earlier in the year. So I've now been and watched a number of the full council meetings, and I have to say there is no one in this borough that is getting anything out of what goes on in those sessions. They are 3.5 hours long. The personal animosity across the council chamber just means that absolutely nothing useful for any of us ever happens. The budget meeting, rather than there being sensible amendments from opposition parties to particular lines in the budget to try and get more things done for us as residents, instead turned into a bit like the Houses of Parliament when there's a budget and everyone proposes alternatives and everyone is yelling insults across the chamber. And in some ways it was incredible to watch, and in some ways it was heartbreaking to watch, because 43% of our kids grow up in poverty in this borough, and the people sat in that chamber were not acting like it was an issue. They were acting like, I hate you, you did this to me 10 years ago, so therefore I'm going to shout insults across the chamber. And it was really, really depressing and heartbreaking to watch. And whilst the election on Thursday is about Parliament, when people are coming to vote next year, when we have our local elections, I really think people put some thought into how we move forward as a borough, because the personal animosity that goes on in that council chamber at the moment means we are not able to grow and move forward as a borough, and there needs to be a complete change in who sat in that chamber.
Bethan.
Yeah, I
Your
witnessed it as well, and it was quite shocking. I went home and I said, I just can't believe what I've just seen in that council meeting. How do they ever get anything done when all they do is yell insults at each other? It was quite incredible. At one point in the meeting I went to, all the councillors retired for a while because everyone was yelling at each other so much that they couldn't continue. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't be about personal animosity and point scoring. We have to have people who can talk to each other and debate things and be reasonable with each other if we're going to get anywhere. If you're just throwing accusations, it doesn't work. Democracy needs to be transparent and it needs to be accountable.
Well, we are coming to the very end now. We will now end up with a round of pitch coming from everyone to the constituents. So the candidates are going to make their pitch to you, the constituents, and you have a chance to decide who you're going to vote on Thursday the 8th. So we will start with David Barker. David, you have your chance. You have 1 minute to convince the constituents.
Thank you. So I shared that I left the private sector myself to get involved in helping other people, and I funded that myself. I didn't wait to get paid as a job. I've invested heavily both time and financially into that for years. And for me, what it's really about now is me standing to say, I'll no longer work for myself, I'll work for you. So I'm going to be your employee. We'll be working together to really change all of these injustices. And again, going back to we need the right people to stand now and to actually represent people, to stop what we're hearing in the council chambers. So we need a movement of people to stand who are not of that political mindset. It's just people who want to help people. So generally, I believe I've got that heart. And I'll share with you one comment a voter made when they read my leaflet. They said, David, you are the British Macron. I'm going to vote for you. So so hopefully people one day say you're the whatever Barker, but for now I'll take the British Macron. Thank you very much.
Someone talked about having a mandate. Well, if you vote Green on Thursday, then you will give us a mandate to hold people to account, because that's what the Green Party are really good at. We stand up for those minorities. We make sure that we hold people to account. We're not afraid to ask the difficult questions of our leaders. That's what we've been doing in the debates. If you've seen any of the debates, Caroline Lucas has stood up and asked the difficult questions. She's held true to our beliefs. That's what we're about in the Green Party. We hold strongly to our beliefs, and we will stand up for the people of Poplar and Limehouse. If you vote Green, we will stand up for you in Parliament, and we will make sure that people are held to account for the state of things in Poplar and Limehouse and that things get better.
Tom?
Well, you've heard the politicians speak. Now it's your chance to decide on Thursday. It's a two-horse race in Poplar and Limehouse. You have a choice between Jeremy Corbyn's candidate or the Conservative candidate. And it's only the Conservative candidate, Chris Wilford, who will be able to join Theresa May's team in securing a strong negotiating team for Brexit and to form a government which will be able to take forward this government's economic programme to secure long-term economic growth. So on Thursday, with confidence, vote Conservative.
Elaine Backshaw.
So your current Labour MP has had his job for the last 20 years, and he didn't think it was worth turning up tonight to talk to you about why you should vote for him again. If he doesn't think you're worth his time, then don't give him your vote on Thursday. In Poplar and Limehouse, you have an opportunity to elect the first Liberal MP since 1945 in the East End of London. Now, I didn't get elected in 2015, but since then, I've spoken to over 7,000 people. I've kept knocking on doors for 2 years since. I've raised casework with the council. I'm getting the Limehouse Canal cleaned up finally of graffiti, and I've been campaigning on everything from antisocial behaviour to housing. If you want someone that's going to work really hard for you in this area to make sure you're protected from the impact of Brexit, someone that listens, and my personal pledge to all of you as well is that the first thing I'll do is write a private members bill to get the definition of affordable when it comes to housing changed, so that it's no longer 80% of market value, but it is something that actually works for us here in Tower Hamlets. These are the things that I want to do for you if you elect me on Thursday. So please lend your vote this time to Elaine Bagshaw and the Liberal Democrats in Poplar and Limehouse.
You have opportunity on Thursday to make a real change. I am part of your community. I know your suffering and your pain. I know the overcrowding homes, antisocial behaviors, drug problem, something now we call laughing gas. Our young people are being affected. If you really want a champion who will stand up for the issues that matters to you, to your families and to your community, if you really want somebody who's not shy away from challenging on difficult circumstances, then it's me that you should vote for on Thursday. But if you want right wing and more mess that we have seen over the last 20 years, then it will be Jim Fitzpatrick, who doesn't even support his own leader, nor does he support his party's manifesto. Conservative cannot win the election. They haven't. Unfortunately, Elaine, as much as I like her, she came behind Greens and UKIP in 2015 election. I am the only alternative to Jim Fitzpatrick. If you are a Labour supporters, if you're a Corbyn supporters, and if you value the community interest, some of the things that we have spoken about, then come out and vote for me, because I am somebody around every single day of the year, not just during election. So vote for Olio Rahman on Thursday.
Well, that is it from this program of General Election 2017 special from LB24TV. Please stay tuned so that we can bring you more for the election night, General Election 2017 special election night from LB24TV. Thank you very much for being with us.